welcome everybody around the world. We really appreciate everybody's participation here. Thank you, those of you who are part of the webinar. I see we have Tokyo on the line, we have Hermosillo on the line, Nashville, Tucson, Phoenix, and hopefully I'm not leaving out anybody. Thank you all speakers for taking the time today to help us understand this challenge, which is, hey, I want to grow from Asia to North America or North America to Asia. So how do I do it? And what should I do with my manufacturing if I have a product and service? And so there's a variety of issues we're going to cover in two different panels. The first panel is going to be talking about market entry, growth panel discussion with 6 experts. We're going to be talking about marketing. We're going to be talking about opportunities, research, market research, product development, and market information for those of you who are looking for information to get connected. And then in our second panel, we'll talk about in a moment, that's going to be more on the operations manufacturing once you've moved into these areas. So we have 5 locations, 14 speakers. We are recording this, so for those of you who fall asleep and miss something, we have this afterwards available. I would like to speak, and Arnulfo, could you come up here and sit next to me for a second? I'd like to thank Arnulfo from Mexicali. Could you, I really appreciate you sponsoring the event. Thank you very much. And you're going to be speaking here in a minute. Could you tell us a little bit about Mexicali?
Well, yes, of course. Thank you very much, Doug, and thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I'm the director of the Mexicali Industrial Development Commission. Mexicali is a city that is along the border with the state of California, and also we share a little bit of border with the state of Arizona. We are the capital state of Baja California, and we are a city that is pretty much well organized in order to try to seek to reach the world and to bring the world into the city of Mexicali. The many industries, among the many industries that are being attracted to the city, we have aerospace cluster, we have the electronic cluster, we have the metal mechanic cluster, we have the automotive industry as well, the food industry, and medical devices. The new industries that are being developed in the area are the IT and software development, which actually many small indigenous companies from the city are right now reaching companies in both industrial companies in town, in the state, in the area of the northwest part of Mexico, and as well with the border with California. And the other industry that is right now growing is basically the energy industry. Mexicali, as similar like Phoenix and Tucson, we share the same desert, and there are many activity right now involved or regarding to try to obtain and to transform the energy from that is coming from the sun, that is coming from the wind as well, and many activity on those industries as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you could stay there for a second, and then we're going to have our speakers come up for the first panel.
Thank you.
Really, the Global Chamber is dedicated to connecting across metros, across borders, and so this type of event is really designed to help you not just get information, but hopefully connect to people, both in your community where you are right now and also around the world. So if you're a member and you meet or get some ideas about connecting with someone that you see or that asks a question or that's speaking, please let me know, doug@globalchamber.org, and I'll be happy to connect you. So the next step now is we're going to go into our panel, on our first panel. So I have the distinct honor of introducing Jan Knight, who is our first speaker. She is an extraordinary person to contact if you're ever interested in market research in another region. And so we thought having her kick off and talking about that first step of, is this a market that I want to go into? Jan will be our person. So Jan, you're in Tucson. Thank you so much for the Mexican consulate for hosting us there. And Jan, please take it away.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Doug, for asking me to be part of this discussion. I'm going to refer to my notes here a little bit to keep on schedule. I'm the icebreaker, I'm told, which is appropriate given that it's 103 today here in Tucson. We'll have about 4 minutes to discuss our topic. So what I'm going to talk about types of information that typically are crucial for you when you're expanding internationally. Then I'm going to give you some specific situations where research is really important and identify some resources that can help you and your businesses. As I'm only really skimming the surface of this topic, I'll mention that I tend to work with entrepreneurs from a diverse set of industries. I provide insight to entrepreneurs from startups to grown-ups. And just as anybody in this group might be, they're starting up a company or they're actually considering expanding a company, you have some of the same issues to worry about and to have to research. My topic, as a reminder, is cross-border research. Strategies and sources vary a little bit with national versus international. Frankly, you always need to determine if you have a product, if your consumers are willing to pay for it, if you have competition. So a few examples when companies should be doing international research for expansion purposes. Maybe you plan to export to another country. Maybe you plan to import parts and supplies from overseas to incorporate into your own manufacturing. That's another way to grow your company's revenue. Maybe you're considering adding a new location or expanding to manufacture your goods, or you're just looking for partners or collaborators, distributors overseas. So digging a little deeper into thinking about exporting, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could determine what your competitors actually export and how much they export? It would be good if you could determine an export strategy, how to sell your product overseas, how to understand the supply chain issues that exist. Have you even tested your product overseas to see if people in another country like it as much as you think they will or they do in the U.S.? And how do you market it? Keep in mind there are brand perception differences. People view things a little differently in other countries, so think about that with your websites and your messaging. And exporting can, of course, just be the beginning to larger things. So in the competition field, you may not have a competitor in the U.S., or you may not think you do. But maybe there's this cool technology company in France, just got some additional funding to expand its manufacturing facilities so it can tweak its products and sell to a new set of customers. Think about that and how you might find that information. Maybe someone else has been selling overseas a very similar product, but they're not on your radar because they don't sell into the US. Maybe other companies have a suite of products overseas, and you may think you could go in with a lower price, but those customers are maybe not buying on price. They're buying on the ease of buying for a set of products. If you're thinking of manufacturing overseas, what about a site location? Is there a workforce there, an educated workforce? Are the logistics and the transportation issues as you might need them to be? Is the workforce local? Can you attract good people? And then there's obviously trade partnerships like things like Brexit. Safety regulations in manufacturing plants, they may not be an equivalent of OSHA that we have in the US. So you may have to learn about labor laws, pay scales, and holidays. Specific research challenges, if you're doing primary research like focus groups, for example, be aware that in some cultures, people do not like to be observed. So that's a key issue in focus groups. Some cultures also have a concern, depending on the gender of the moderator of a focus group. So there may be some issues that people won't talk about. Also keep in mind simple things like spelling. If you're looking for something in the UK, don't spell aluminum, spell aluminium. Other cultural challenges, it's more than just language, it is really brand perception. Also, if you think you're manufacturing or using a supplier with the long holidays in some of those countries, cause problems in them meeting your deadline. And in presentations, I often tell people, don't just Google it. And what I mean by that is there are lots and lots of business tools online and databases that you pay for, but are worth the money quite often so you don't have to make mistakes. But what I do say is if you do Google it, the most common search engine in the world, make sure you go to the country's website, Google website. So go to google.co.uk, for example, or google.fr for France. There are a number of sources that you would be probably aware of to get help. Some of those would be immigration attorneys or international attorneys, specific services for freight forwarding and such, and government services. In my remaining however many seconds I have, Doug, I would like to just mention a couple of the fee-based resources. If you don't catch the names, don't worry, because if you want to follow up with me, I have a handout for this. But basically, there are online databases that you pay for. A couple just come to mind. Euromonitor and Statista are databases that provide lots of international consumer data. There are others that provide international industry data and talk about key segmentations, the key players, the trends, the industry overviews in that country, or globally at least, and Australia. That's one product that I use. Another one that I use a lot is where you could, for example, find specifically a table that details the market size of microscopes for Brazil, something that specific. And you need to have your access to those types of resources. There's another, the last one that I want to mention is called PIERS, P-I-E-R-S, and it basically includes from 2003, if you're a US, I think you only can subscribe if you're in the US, but it includes bills of lading for export and imports for numerous international markets on a diverse set of industries. So you get the company records, you can see bills of lading, you can see what people have been doing trade-wise for a long time. So that's my very quick 4 minutes. I'd be happy to answer questions whenever it's time. Thank you.
JP, are you going to introduce the Consul General?
Sorry about that. Yes, we're going to make sure that we can use the podium. It's my pleasure to introduce the Consul General for Mexico.
Thank you very much. I want to interrupt the session. Thank you, Jan, for your comments. Global entry, marketing, global production seems to me like the general trending right now, and makes total sense. I mean, our countries are totally engaged in international trading, and Mexico is not the exception. And the fact that we are on the side, at the side, and getting the U.S. as a main trade partner, make us part of this global production. And Mexico also defined, since many, many years ago, when we went into the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade, that after converting the World Trade Organization, and then we went to NAFTA with Canada and the U.S., we fully decided on the quality change in our country, reorienting our own industrial model, fully dedicated to trade, international trade, and worldwide investment. So it makes total sense to be here today, and I just want to welcome the opportunity for the consulate to host this meeting here in Tucson, and the amazing opportunity also to have 6 different locations worldwide, from Tokyo to Nashville, from Nashville to Hermosillo, from Hermosillo to Phoenix, etc. So to us it's a global experience so far right now, and we are more than intended to continue in this specific way, fostering business, trade, and international understanding. Our good friend Salvador Ramirez, thank you for being over here. Thank you for the presentation Konno gave to us, and we are happy to connect all around. Congratulations, and we're going to be here following this specific seminar on marketing, global entry, and global business. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. General. Now back to you, Doug.
Thank you, JP. That was Consul General Pineda down in Tucson. So now we move to Tokyo. So Nobuo Yonoyama, Executive Director for Global Chamber Tokyo in the Hiro section in Ibisu area of Tokyo. And you have a really fascinating CEO, Hiroshi Konno, President, CEO of Konno Corporation. He's going to be talking about some developing technologies in Japan. Nobuo and Konno-san, dozo.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. This is Nobuo Yonoyama, Executive Director of Tokyo. Welcome to a beautiful Friday here in Tokyo and in the morning. And I'm excited to introduce all of you, Mr. Hiroshi Konno, the President of Konno Corporation, He's really a challenger for not just the technology, but new business model and human resources development. So here is Mr. Konno, and please welcome him. Thank you.
Good morning or good evening. I'm Hiroshi Konno, President of Konno Corporation. Today, I would like to talk about manufacturing SME based in Tokyo. Also, I would like to introduce our efforts of collaboration and digitization of Tokyo's SME. Konno Corporation was founded back in 1961. The present number of employees is 38. We have 2 factories, one in Tokyo and the other in Fukushima. We are doing a business of sheet metal fabrication in Tokyo factory. We are producing parts for research equipment and machinery used at universities, laboratories, major manufacturers' factories, etc. Most of those products are custom-made. We design and produce them as per individual customers' orders. Although we make the best use of digital technologies such as 3D CAD and structural analysis, our manufacturing site is rather a traditional factory where skilled craftsmen are the key element. And we think that is our strength, to have those skillful technical staff in metalworking, such as sheet metal, welding, machining, and other manufacturing processes. Over and above those strengths, we have a team spirit that drives our staff to form an ad hoc team to respond to our customers' requests swiftly and flexibly. Let me talk a little bit about Tokyo. Tokyo is the world's largest economic city, as you might know. Japan has grown as a technology and manufacturing-oriented nation. Although Tokyo is a big city, it is still a homeland for many SME manufacturers. However, the number of factories and the number of staff working there are decreasing year by year. The reason is obvious. The factories of major Japanese corporations have been moving to neighbor nations for cheaper and abundant labor forces. In the past, during the high economic growth period, we could observe a pyramid-type subcontracting structure. Large corporations as the top of the pyramid represented the strength of Japanese manufacturing industry. However, mass production is gone to overseas. The Lehman shock of 2008 further damaged SME manufacturers' management. Many SME gave up their business or were forced to go bankruptcy. But some of them acquired new capabilities during that period. They are not for mass production products, but to receive orders of engineering flow, such as research and development. They began to work on manufacturing something necessary for innovation, namely parts designing and prototyping, new processing technology, new equipment, dies and jigs, which are required for development of production technologies. There are various types of processing business in Tokyo. Even if the size of those companies is rather small, they have strength of processing technology. They do not wait for subcontracting work from major companies, but promote themselves and strengthen design ability to collaborate with other unique SME to complement with each other by mutually needed technology. Such companies can respond to customers' varied development needs through collaboration of necessary technologies depending on project. But we also began to observe another issue. Jobs have become complicated with new requirements of small quantities of various kinds, advanced quality, and short lead times. The amount of information exchange is obviously increasing. Person in charge is kept up with correspondence of telephone and email while he or she has to run through the floor to manage delivery and quality assurance. Although I meant to advance our business, I've got seriously concerned because I found our productivity had been rather declining. Since around 2014, we observed a movement to accelerate digitization and smart factories in Japan. The Japanese government and major Japanese companies were stimulated by Germany and the United States. I joined a forum called Industrial Value Chain Initiative, IVI, with my fellow SME managers. Through intensive activities of IVI, I got an idea that multiple SME could be connected and virtually function like one factory through digitization. Since custom order design and production are necessary for R&D, I thought it might make sense for small organizations to cooperate to flexibly combine the technological knowledge, facilities, and experiences of skilled technicians. For the past 2 years, we were struggling but steadily progressing the digitization of our factories. With the help of experts, we developed our own production management system and installed touch panels on our factory sites. We were, with the status of individual process updated by the staff on the floor, you can monitor current progress in real time. At the beginning, we heard a complaint from some conservative staff on the shop floor, like, my job is increased by the status input. But eventually, they have adapted to the change. In addition, the three companies among the three companies, we succeeded in sharing process progress information on a real-time basis through the cloud technology. Small factories with distance from each other are now able to work together by understanding the mutual progress. We share a request for proposal from customers on the cloud database, which enable all of us to immediately discuss the best way to satisfy the customer's needs. Japan is usually said to be a country developed by issues, energy issues, environmental issues, revitalization of agriculture, declining labor force due to the aging society, healthcare, medical care, wealth care issue, and so on. Many researchers are making efforts to overcome these challenges with Japan's advanced technical abilities. I'm optimistic about Japan's prospect. The manufacturing industry in Tokyo is now trying to acquire the ability to get connected for a new era. We are proactively promoting digitization and looking for new partners more openly. We are proud of having people with sophisticated skills and knowledge devoting themselves to work seriously We wish to support various advanced research and technology development in Japan from our capacity and perspectives. For now, we keep focusing on domestic market, but someday in not too distant future, we are hoping to go global. Thank you for your attention.
Arigato gozaimashita, Konno-san. Thank you very much. And is available for members, and it'll be referenced in the follow-up information from the blog. So our next speaker, very nice, I think, tie-in. Probably, do you guys know each other by any chance?
No, but I'm very interested in what he was talking about.
Okay.
I see that problem with our suppliers, that they don't talk to each other. It's fantastic.
So, and there's a lot of similarities in our next speaker's business. So I'd like to introduce Eric Miller of PADT Inc., who's going to be spending a few minutes and talking about product development in a global world.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So this is a manufacturing summit, but I want to talk about what happens first, which is you got to design the parts before you make them. And just as manufacturing originally turned into a global endeavor, product development is now a global activity, even for small companies. It's not something that's just done in one place anymore. Of course, as you know, large corporations have design centers around the globe, and they've kind of figured out how to do this to some extent, some better than others. And with outsourcing as well as just some other issues, small companies now work globally. So, why is that? The most prominent reason why we develop products globally is cost, of course. The other is time shifting can really reduce development time. You can run 2 or 3 shifts, and I've seen companies do that by shifting the work around the world. But more often than that, we talk about cost, we talk about time shifting, but the reality is when it works, it's because you've gone where the expertise is. So you may need that expert in sheet metal part design that's in Tokyo, and you may need that person that's an expert in welding that's in Berlin, and we can all work together on designing the part now. So that's great. It's wonderful. We all sit down and go, this is a great way to work globally, but there's one significant problem, and it's communication. It's a significant problem, and it's why it doesn't happen as much as it probably should. There's problems with the communication between different steps, and which is kind of what was addressed from a manufacturing standpoint with the system they were talking about. There's team members don't talk, teams don't talk across teams between different teams. Management of the project is sometimes difficult when your manager is in one country and your workers are in another. There's, of course, language barriers and time shifts. There's cultural assumptions. And I think one of the more significant problems is you can create silos where the different members of the team in different locations don't really necessarily feel like they're part of the same team, and they're someone else versus part of who you are here. So we've been working on this for quite some time, and our customers do this quite well sometimes. And what really helps is really doing product development right. Just because you're working globally doesn't mean the tried and true ways of developing products shouldn't be applied. The number one is you've got to just create clear design specifications. You have to start with that, especially when you're developing products in a global environment, because if you don't share what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, you're not going to get there. You have to create and manage a schedule, probably more than you would if you're all working in the same building, and then manage track and really think about deliverables, because deliverables aren't something that's going to go between 2 people that share a cubicle, but they're going to be transferred around the world. So understanding what those deliverables are from one person to another is really important. And lastly, of course, key to product development anywhere is holding people accountable. That's really, really important. Don't assume anything. That's probably been our biggest mistake in trying to work with global teams, is we assume that the Czech Republic understands what we're talking about and they're working on it, and 2 weeks later we're like, where's the end product? And you find out they thought they were waiting for us to get them something. So don't assume. It's pretty real. And one thing that we really developed in-house that worked out well for us is we did 2 significant projects, 2 Japanese auto manufacturers many years ago. And that was a real problem for us because communication was just not working. And we were trying to attack it with these complicated ways, having conference calls, and the time difference was a real problem. And what we ended up doing is just going to a very simple paper or spreadsheet-based way of tracking specifications, questions, answers, tasks, and deliverables in a very simple way. And when we finished our shift, we finished working on our design, we packaged it all up, filled out our spreadsheet an hour before the end of the workday, sent it off to Japan. They opened it up and read it when they got to work in the morning. They did the same thing when they finished, and it worked really, really well. So keep things simple, communicate in writing because of the language barriers and the time differences. We really recommend that. The other thing that works really well is team building. Get on that plane, go visit each other, go out to dinner, share some stories, build relationships so you're no longer them and us. That really, really helps. Of course, we prefer to go to the fun places around the world where our partners are, and they don't like to come to Phoenix in July, so that works out well. Another thing that's really kind of the elephant in the room in any kind of globalization is when your workers feel like they're training their replacement, especially when you're working with a lower cost supplier. So it's really, really important to not ignore that and recognize it. That doesn't work. I think large corporations have shown that that doesn't work. What does work is really working with people who fit the needs that you need right there. So you may be working with a low-cost supplier, but use them because they're good at what they do. Don't try to replace your experts with a low-cost supplier someplace. And don't expect your experts to train their replacements. That doesn't work. Be smart about it. Be open about it. We've done that. We've worked with folks in Guadalajara and in China that we outsource a lot of the CAD design work to. That's what they're really good at. We're really good at project management. It's been a great teaming up. And we don't tell our engineers, we'll teach them how to do your job. So that's been a really good thing. So that's pretty much my summary of things we've learned through the years of working globally, creating products, and hopefully find it informative. And you can always reach out for more information if you'd like.
Eric and PADT are located in Tempe, Arizona. Eric, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is actually here in Phoenix, or actually more specifically in Scottsdale. Vinayak Gupta, Zero Mass Water. We'll be talking about growing and operating cross-border marketing side. This is a really unique and interesting business, and thought it would be very instrumental and informative to hear kind of their story and how they're approaching not only the marketing side, but the manufacturing side, who's in our next panel. Vinayak?
Thank you, Doug. Really appreciate the forum. First time here. What an amazing collection of global talent and global folks you have over here. I'll take a couple of minutes to describe Zero Mass Water's business and then talk about how we are really progressing globally. Zero Mass Water, quite simply, if I were to describe, is in the business of making pure drinking water out of thin air. Infrastructure free, just using renewable energy. If you think about how nature makes water, is how Zero Mass Water makes water. Nature uses the power of sun. We uses the power of sun using solar PV, extract moisture from atmosphere, which is infinitely replaceable, and continuously replenishes itself. Take that, do some magic with our proprietary technology, and extract out the purest form of drinking water. The technology is very distributed. It can be, you literally can take the devices and put them in the middle of a desert and it will make water for you without requiring any plugins. Pretty unique opportunity. And as you look at the water problem globally, what we realize is water is actually the greatest crisis in all of humanity. The more you unpeel the onion, the more you realize what oil is not the new problem. Oil is not the problem anymore. It is water, which is the new oil, really. So what we do is we are currently in 10 countries right now. Of course, U.S., Mexico, and few countries in Middle East, few countries in Southeast Asia, and few countries in ASEAN countries, ASEAN region. In terms of really driving marketing cross borders, our philosophy is very simple. Find the need, and Zero Mass Water actually is very simple to find the need. Find the need, don't create the need. Really identify where the partnerships are to be made, especially all the way from the government levels to NGOs to private sectors. partner with investment partners like ProMexico. I'll give a huge shout out to folks here from ProMexico who have been very instrumental in driving our connections in Mexico. And really understand and know the culture of the countries where you are going in to establish a relationship first. That's kind of what has been our philosophy. In Mexico particularly, what we're doing is not only just go and create a solution that allows us to solve the water crisis, but also at the same time really energize the local economy. Our philosophy is, if we are going to go to a country, what we are going to do is we are going to go with full-blown capability, wherein the solution that really is irreplaceable, but also at the same time try and integrate the local economy. And you'll learn more about in the second panel as it comes about. So what we do is total package, total solution. If we are going to sell a product in a country, you want to be able to figure out a way to make it over there. In Mexico, our philosophy is very simple. We want to solve the drinking water problem for Mexico by making water in Mexico. So that's the philosophy we prescribe to in US, in Mexico, in Southeast Asia, in Middle East, and wherever the company is going to go and solve the problems. So that's pretty much it from my side in terms of driving our marketing philosophy. Doug, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that, Vinayak. And thanks for being a member of Global Chamber. You mentioned Eduardo Gonzalez of ProMexico, who's been around the world, and you've worked in different parts of North America. You're now, fortunately, in Phoenix, for those of us in Phoenix. You're going to be talking about growing and manufacturing U.S. versus Mexico. I've heard a little bit about that in the news. You might want to share some real news.
Well, let's talk about the region first.
Okay.
So we live in the largest free trade zone in the world, free trade area in the world. So we are 474 million people on this NAFTA region. And Mexico's right there. We have 50 border crossings with the U.S., of which 6 of them are here in Arizona. It's roads, people, it's cars, it's trains. Talking about trains, the trade only taking trains in consideration. From 1999 to 2015, we grew the export business from $20 billion to $72 billion. So it's very interesting what NAFTA has done to the region. 5 million jobs depend on NAFTA in the U.S. 100,000 jobs depend in Arizona for NAFTA. So it's pretty significant, the business that we have. But it's not only goods being manufactured in Mexico. For every single product that is manufactured in Mexico, 40% of that content of that product is U.S.-based or U.S.-based origin. So actually what we do is we manufacture products together. It's not that Mexico manufactures parts or competes with USA. Actually, we manufacture products between both of us. And there's a great need in Mexico to get more foreign companies involved in the supply chain. The last estimate is that we import about 60% of all the process of all the manufacturing in Mexico. So that's about $65 billion that we need supply for Mexico for different processes: stamping, foundry, automotive interiors, semiconductors, cables, die casting. So it's a great opportunity for companies who are in those businesses to take advantage of the needs in Mexico in our supply chain. And of course, we have free trade agreements with 46 countries. So what is my job? So I work for ProMexico. It's a Mexican government agency that promotes export from Mexico, and we promote business development. And the way that we do this, we do it through different type of services. We have a intelligent unit, a strategic unit, where we can provide information about the country and the industries. Like Vinayak mentioned, we're working with them. We're working with the automotive industry and with the aerospace industry, pinpointing where the needs are. We have 29 offices in Mexico. We have 49 offices around the world. And through those offices and the expertise of my colleagues, we help companies stay competitive in a global marketplace. This office in Phoenix has been here for almost a year and a half. And the responsibility for the office is Arizona and Nevada. And we've been successfully working with companies, find new partners or shift their offshore production to a nearshore option. So that is what we do, and we welcome the opportunity again to talk about this, Doug. Thank you again, and that's it.
Thank you very much. The idea for this particular seminar actually came from Eduardo and I spending a day together, about 2 months ago, with City of Surprise, who's a member of ours, and some of the things that we were actually at a Japanese manufacturer here in town, and we thought about bringing Japan and Mexico and the U.S. together. So Eduardo, thanks for not only that, but everything that you do.
All those robots got me nervous.
All the rabbits?
The robots?
Robots.
Robots.
Okay.
All the robots in the company that we saw got me very nervous. We had to do something.
Very, very high-tech Japanese company with lots of robots in injection molding machines. So our last speaker, and then we'll have questions, is Gus Scannapieco, who's in Nashville. He's an expert on NAFTA. Eduardo, you talked about NAFTA. Gus, take us into kind of where we are with NAFTA, what the next steps are, and how does that impact our marketing view of the region?
Well, hello, everyone. I'd like to give you a little history, if I may, for a moment, about my involvement with NAFTA. It happened at the time that the agreement was finally drafted by the Clinton administration. About 50 business executives from the United States were called upon to comment on the agreement, and if they felt that they had anything to add that should be considered by the administration before it was submitted for final ratification, we were directed to do so. So I put together a team of 5 staff people, and we reviewed primarily the environmental and aspects of and the labor aspects of the agreement. We submitted our commentary, and much of it was incorporated into the final agreement. And at the end of 1993, the agreement was signed by President Clinton in Washington, and I was pleased to have been present at the time for that signing. What it did for the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, it tremendously increased the trade between the 3 companies, primarily by reducing a lot of tariffs and other restrictions that had previously existed. The discussions in recent years now, and particularly since the election of President Trump here in the United States, has been to renegotiate the NAFTA agreement. Well, after these many years, it does need some renegotiation, because at the time of the original agreement, e-commerce wasn't even on the tip of our tongues. Data localization inclusions weren't involved. We need to do more about workers' rights at this stage, and eliminate a lot of the frivolous lawsuits that currently exist between the nations. And of course, the rules of origin to benefit from lower tariffs need to be explored and broadened further. And it is my opinion that in this renegotiation process, I'm hoping that the administration will also consider aspects of the TPP, which we withdrew from, that can include within this agreement Japan, include some of the other Latin countries like Chile, maybe even Peru, Argentina, because what this can do is further expand trade benefits between the countries that we will need. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of politics have gotten in the way in discussions, though, that the United States is going to withdraw completely from NAFTA. They're not going to withdraw from NAFTA. At the end of the day, it's going to be a renegotiation, but a necessary renegotiation because times have changed since the original signing, and technologies have changed that we need to reconsider now in incorporating within the agreement. When we look at the original NAFTA agreement, it tremendously increased trade between the nations. I know for the United States, agriculture, the automotive and healthcare industries, financial services, all increased in their trade with Mexico and Canada. And there was a lot of cross-investment, both out and into the United States. So in order for governments to become more competitive, we need to just take a new, fresh look here in the 21st century and see what it is that we need to modify that brings the agreement up to date, but at the same time incorporate a look at broader inclusions of nations that can help in the whole trade aspect of the agreement. I currently am CEO of Global Business Ventures, and what we try to do is work with new startups and early stage companies to help them look at how they can trade in countries like Mexico and Canada and Japan. I heard the introduction from earlier about market research and understanding cultural differentiations. What we try to do is also introduce a vehicle of licensing. I personally had the experience of licensing my company's products back in the 80s and 90s that were healthcare products. And we used licensees. For example, in Europe, we used Unilever, which at the time we made the license, they were the 15th largest company in the world. I didn't have to worry about some of the intricacies that we would have to spend money on because the licensee already knew his territory, he knew his clients, and et cetera. So I just wanted to introduce that aspect as well for companies to consider that licensing is also a very open option for entering the international markets. Thank you.
That the bios for nearly everyone are in the event. Many of you have a copy of that. We'll have that information in the blog post as well. So if there are any speakers where we don't have your bio, please send that over and we'll include that. We'd like to now switch to the Q&A time. I've got a room full of folks here in Phoenix that look like they're all awake. They're all interested. There's a lot of information here. There's a, kind of from a fire hose. Anybody have any questions here or at any of the other locations? Bob, you have a question.
Yes, I'd like to ask.
Could you step up here and ask the question? And while Bob is stepping up, I'd like to encourage anybody who's on the virtual side of it, if you just stand right there and ask your question. Anybody who's on the virtual side, please feel free to ask your question. Bob.
Yes, I'd like to ask Gus about what are the licensing laws in Africa?
Okay, thank you.
What we did, we licensed in South Africa initially, and how we did that actually was rather than have a separate license with a company in South Africa that were, because they were just getting themselves reorganized at the time. What we did is we found out that Unilever had a presence in South Africa, so we set up a license in South Africa through Unilever, and we set up a manufacturing site there. And what we were doing is we were packaging hand care products for the healthcare industry, So we sent the packaging equipment there, and then Unilever would purchase a dispensing system and refills into that dispensing system from us, and they would manufacture the products that go into them and package them there in South Africa.
Okay.
Now, at this stage, I might look at going direct because they're a bit more mature than they were back in the 80s.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much. And we have actually an Africa event coming up next month, so tune into that. Any other questions? And if I'm going to ask a question of Konno-san because of the, I mean, you showed some pretty dramatic information there on many levels. The change in manufacturing in Tokyo, the change of technologies that's happening where now driverless vehicles are coming. There's all sorts of things that are happening. Trade with NAFTA and TPP is evolving and changing, and we don't exactly know how that's going to happen. So there's lots of change, lots of uncertainty. How do we manage through this? How do we keep a cool head and run a business recognizing that almost everything is changing more rapidly than ever?
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, you. Oh, okay. Hello.
But why don't you sit in the chair?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, it's a broad and big question topic, and yeah, the managers here in Japan every day thinking of those environmental changes, and yes, Brexit and new president in the United States of America are really causing how should I say, many questions here, or whether we should stay with TPP or we should be independent or we should seek for RCEP. RCEP is China, Korea, Japan, plus ASEAN, plus India and Australia, New Zealand. So many factors are going on for considerations. But as Konno-san said, one thing for sure is the dynamism of internet-based things, network, social media, and so forth. So through the networks and through the conversations with colleagues and friends, we just share the thoughts. But to be honest, we are not really, we don't have any crystal ball, so we don't know what's coming next. So to be honest, we just waiting for the intelligence information from various sources. Does that, did I answer your question?
Okay, very good Japanese style. Absolutely. We have a question in Tucson. JP, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, it's my name is Tony Martin. I'm a retired chairman and CEO of Walbro Engine Management. I have some comments to make about particularly international transactions and ways of doing business. Several comments were made by some of the speakers about the cultural differences and really getting to know the people on the other side of the table. That is a very critical component. My experience in Asia is Asians want high frequency of contact with the same people. That will clearly help the communication channel. The other comment I'd like to make is about IP, intellectual property, and being able to protect your IP as you start to migrate into the international dimension. My final comment is FCPA, Federal Corrupt Practices Act. Be very mindful of the training that is required when you're dealing particularly with government locations. And I have gone through FCPA experience, which was not pleasant. And I can tell you it's a very important aspect of dealing with government institutions. just that's comments from me. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't think we heard a question there, but thank you for the comments, very informative. One question I have for Eric Miller of PADT, who just perked up. And one of the question I asked earlier about many changes, you're involved with lots of new product development, with prototyping. Are you seeing a change in how people are approaching you? Are you getting inundated? Is it roughly the same as it was 5 years ago? You've been involved with the business for a while. I mean, when you look at it at a macro level, what are you seeing from a standpoint of people approaching you, given the market changes and dynamics?
Yeah, it's definitely different. We're still trying to figure out what's different. We had a significant, recession, and that this recovery has been extremely strange. And one of the things we see is that our customers, our large customers especially, are sitting on piles of cash. Innovation within corporations is almost non-existent these days. They're very risk adverse. They don't want to make mistakes. So they're not innovating. What they're doing is hoping that a startup will show up that they can acquire. They're not funding those startups, but they're shifting the risk out of their own corporation. So the days of an AT&T Bell Labs or even Honeywell is a local example of innovating within their own organization is almost non-existent these days. So that's a big shift that we've seen. The other thing we've seen is just a reluctance to develop new products over the last 10 years. And that has changed in the last year or two. So people are now kind of over the recession. They're sitting on piles of money. They bought everybody they can buy because it's really been growth through acquisition for quite a while. And now it's, okay, we have to come up with new products. We have to develop new things ourselves. Or we have to acquire a startup that's doing it. So we are starting to see those purse strings open up. We are starting to see people look at upgrading their products or developing new products, looking at new markets to get into. That is changing. And this is a different world than maybe the startup world where you're looking for that home run disruptive technologies to change the world. I'm talking about people that make like forceps for medical. They've been making the same forcep for 50 years. Is it time to develop a new forcep? Well, yeah, they're starting to say, yeah, maybe it is time for us to look at new materials, new manufacturing processes. Maybe we can make a better forcep. So we're starting to see that happen.
Okay, so even the basic things, beyond driverless vehicles, going all the way back to things we do today.
I mean, it's one of my pet peeves that we kind of focus on the next Facebook or the next Uber, right? That's great. That's going to happen, but most of us aren't going to be part of that. There's a lot of companies out there, thousands of companies out there that make. I went to a company in California 2 days ago that makes antennas that everybody attaches to their Internet of Things devices and their computers and things like that. They're a Slovakian company, not a Czech company, and with offices here in the U.S. And that's what they do, is they just make cheap antennas. And it's a huge business. And they've doubled their size in the last 2 years. And so there's a lot of stuff going on out there that's not getting a lot of press. That's really exciting.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, panel. Thanks for all the panelists around the world. That's the end of the first panel. How about a round of global applause for these speakers?